he's the reason why we're all here. I'm a new OMI, and I love this project. I was kind of sitting on the sidelines for a while. I'm heavily into Rome too, but I'm very pumped for what you guys are building, and I'm just excited for the future. That's all I had. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So to be clear, like to everybody here and everybody that's listening, like it isn't like Zeus is making all the decisions, right, within the protocol at all, but he's like serving pretty much as like, at this point, like the protocol can run without Zeus entirely, but he's serving as sort of an advisor, right, where he like helps us determine where the protocol should go and everything. And I think that's a pretty valuable thing to have at any time. I mean, as long as he wants to fulfill that role. Okay, I'll open up the proposal and go over some common questions. Okay, so I didn't want to comment some things because I don't think text really does me justice. So I'll just say it over voice. So in terms of like how the people that were proposed within this OIP or rather request for comment came to be, like they came from the core and strategos. And I personally, and obviously this is very biased seeing as I'm proposed, but like I personally think that there is no better, there are no better people to propose the council members than core plus strategos. Like these people have been involved with the protocol since the start. They've seen all of these council members perform, their leadership skills, their overall skills, and everything. And I just objectively don't think there are better people to suggest council members. Which is not to say the community can't just vote no on everything, right? And just say no, we don't agree, or comment even, comment even within the proposal. No, we don't agree with this person because of this, and this. But I don't think it is really possible for the community itself to like take 100 DAO contributors and vote in council members from those 100 contributors. I don't think they have that level of insight.
Yeah, Shadow, if I may add a comment, because I always hear like description of different groups, like the strategos, the core, the community, and for the new homies that are listening, the whole DAO team came from the community, right? So first and foremost, the team is all community members, right? The difference between the community members that work in the DAO and the community members that do not work in the DAO is probably that they have more time, they have more interest in it, and maybe in some cases they were earlier. Like yourself, you started contributing, I think first with the dashboard, right? Before no one had a dashboard, and I remember Sue said, "Okay, let's find someone that makes a dashboard," and you showed up, right? And that's totally fine. So from that perspective, I think we are all in the same boat. It's all community members, right? It's just that we all help in different ways steer the ship.
Yeah, and maybe to like clarify to people, like even the strategos, like how the DAO came to be, anybody that wanted to contribute within the community to the protocol, they join the DAO. The DAO has a
Yep.
few teams based on your interests and skills that you can join. And then those teams organically elected strategos to lead them based
Yeah,
on merit, like who contributed the most, who has shown himself to be a leader. And it's like it's not, and those strategos can always be, changed if the contributors within the department think that they're not doing a good job. So it's really just like honestly from the community up to the top, like elections. It's just like
exactly.
the people that have the best insight should propose members.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's an emergent structure that was created over months from the bottom up, right? Um, and as you said, it can be changed, it can be challenged, it needs to be challenged so it improves. But it's not strategos versus community or community versus core. It's we are all trying to achieve the best, right? So that's same group of people.
trying to see whether like it would be really appreciated if people wrote questions, tagged us, or wanted to come up on stage. I'm trying to like find the most common questions on the forum right now. If not, I accepted. Like I expected much more questions about this proposal. But like
Maybe
if
we should
not, we
move
can
to the
always
next.
move. Yeah, we can always move to the other proposals, and then people can tag. Yeah. Let me check the announcement. Okay, why make the leadership team now rather than earlier or later? Well, like it, like the leadership existed. It was just kind of like it was kind of an empty zone between core team and strategos, where each group expected the other group to fulfill some roles, and that was missing. And so we wanted to entirely dissolve the core team, introduce the council, which would have different responsibilities from strategos, like more high level, more broad, DAO wide, topics, and basically so that every role is fulfilled there. Like strategos are very functional and deal with the day to day, right? And the council is supposed to have a more broad overview of everything that's going on. So to your question, like it should have probably been done earlier, better, but later definitely doesn't make sense. It needs to be done as soon as possible. Uh, PC lips, or however you
Yeah,
pronounce it.
yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can say anything about the market maker proposal we had a little while back, if there's been any updates on that.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I know Wartel was dealing with it, and
Yeah.
he's traveling. He couldn't make the call. He would have the best insight. But if you know Shadow, then go ahead.
Yeah, I think they have some legal regulatory issues with dealing at the moment with us. Like that's the feedback we got from them.
Okay, is it a matter of basically having the developers not dox themselves that makes the legal issues come about?
No, it is more like the management of funds.
No, no, yeah,
Oh,
I can weave in that the main concern is what relates to how the multi-sig is managed, right? Not that it's doxed or not doxed, but the fact that from a regulatory perspective, the multi-sig could be considered a right to invest funds or control the treasury, which is not what we currently do. So we are meeting next Tuesday to clarify these things, right? And involved our legal team to help them figure out how to move forward. So yeah, it takes time, and the experience that Wonderland had with regulators didn't help us, meaning that from the market maker perspective, that's also a cloud that needs to be clarified, right? Even though we have nothing to do with them, um, there's still something that they are cautious.
right. Thank you.
Yep.
I think it's just easy to stamp, without stamp us like with the whole multi-sig thing without looking into what actually goes on, right? So hopefully, if we clarify that with them, it will be all right later on.
Yeah.
Perfect. I appreciate it, guys.
There was somebody else on stage, right? Just a second ago. Jeremy Bell, I think. But is there a framework for when reserve
No,
bonds
there's
kick back in? I know LP bonds are only offered now, which makes sense, but I'm guessing there is a price for market cap or some other metric where we may turn reserve bonds back on. Yeah, it basically depends at the moment on the overall health of the market. We're not trying to emit too much at the moment, so we're just kind of trying to not keep the LP pools diluted or ARBed. So, Jeremy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious about the original topic you guys were discussing around, voting the various people into kind of the different roles and kind of making that whole part kind of operationalizing that whole part. And I'm curious just about, like, does the community need to, like, does the whole community need to vote on that, or is there a different method where the DAO and or like some of the smaller groups would vote amongst themselves who should be in those roles that doesn't require like the overhead of having everyone participate? I'm just curious to kind of get your opinion on how to handle those types of matters as this scales.
That's an excellent question. We had those discussions internally. Like, to be frank, we never voted on any of these things with the community. Strategos weren't voted on Snapshot, right? Core team prior to that hasn't been voted on Snapshot. We don't vote contributors into the DAO on Snapshot, right? So like this also shouldn't have been an exception, but we wanted to entirely formalize it, make the responsibilities clear so that we are all held accountable, and just make it a clear process in terms of how to do it in a decentralized matter, and how to personally my main concern is how to do it so that the people that are best informed are the ones making the decisions, whether it's through some form of delegation or something. I just want the people that have the best insight into DAO contributors and who should be on the council, for them to make the decision. That is a question for us to think about for sure for the future.
Yeah, I mean that's basically where I was coming at. It's just like it I don't know how any of us could necessarily vote like effectively because we don't know most of these people, or at least we've never worked with them. So it's such an unusual vote to see. And I mean, I'm happy to trust everyone on the team and kind of vote. They were clearly nominated for a reason. But I'm not surprised there was a lot of kind of uncertainty or questions about it because it's a difficult thing for us to vote on.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a
I
great
definitely agree.
that's a great question. It's a great question, Jeremy. Historically, as Shadow was saying, we never voted on this, and the team grew organically. The one thing that we always requested authorization from the community was in terms of global budget. The first budget was like whether 15K a week, I believe, to compensate the early contributors in the DAO, and then that was increased in several OIPs. But the team, as you clearly say, it's hard to vote on someone that you do not know, right? And you should not be doing that.
Awesome. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great question. Okay, let's jump to other proposals, and we can always return to this as questions come in or people raise hands or whatever. Let me see what is there interesting. So request for comment, grants V1, V2. I think that can be skipped for now, since it's a request for comment at the moment. Rocket Pool whitelist, I think that can also be skipped. Bearer chain investment, strategic partnership, that's up for vote. I don't know whether there are questions around that. I'm gonna go out and say off the bat, probably unpopular opinion, that I don't think we should be investing those kind of funds in Bearer chain. Not that I have anything against the project itself or the people behind it or whatever. It is just that I don't think it's a good time to invest those kinds of funds into a very, very early stage protocol. I also don't like that. I also think this was a case of community voting on something they have no real insight on. I didn't see any due diligence done there, and I think this is a flaw within the governance process that needs to be fixed. I don't think defaulting to going to the community for budget is a sustainable way to allocate resources.
Yeah, I just want to build upon that real quick. Building your own blockchain and consensus protocol, that's a pretty big task. And why should we just trust these people to, with 500K of our treasury's money? I don't know. I saw the votes go out earlier, and I don't know. I was a little bit taken back, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to get that much voting power. Um, but I'm very bearish on it. It's kind of a meme on crypto Twitter, and you know, memes can be good, but I don't know. I'm very bearish on it. It takes a really strong team to create a new blockchain. They want to integrate IBC and utilize what Terminus has had. I don't know. Maybe you guys can build upon it more.
Personally,
I don't know all the technicalities of it, but it doesn't seem like it's a no-brainer play, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I think the process needs to be redone. I would be up for something like these projects that ask for funding like that. I would honestly like make a requirement that they need to have like 2 or 3 investors already on board, because in this market, if you have like any sort of good idea, like not original idea, any sort of good idea, you will raise funds from somebody in the space. And so if your main if your main source of funding is Zoom and you can't find other investors, I don't think it's a good project then.
Though to be clear, I think they do have other, reputable.
Yeah, I don't know. I just said like it should be a requirement going forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in community's feedback on the process, right? Because I'm not going to state my view on Chain specifically, but yeah, it's just interesting things that don't necessarily fit into incubator, right, or partnerships, but you can have someone come directly to the community, and what kind of due diligence is incumbent upon the DAO and the community itself. It's definitely like the area that warrants further exploration.
Yeah, I mean, what security precautions have they under? Does anybody know? I haven't looked into it too much, but I noticed that they were doing their own consensus protocol. So that's a pretty big risk right there. Diving into something completely new in the space. So I don't know. I think we should get more information on that.
Yeah, the issue with that, Marco, is that the community should rally and vote against if that's the sentiment. Um, this is one of the downsides of a very decentralized protocol, is that we are following what the community says.
Right.
So
I
if
mean,
there's no involvement of the community, then we have an issue, right?
right.
I think like it's also a good opportunity for the community to uh, realize that like their votes count, their opinions count. Like it should not be possible like to pass whatever on the governance, otherwise that is a governance failure. And obviously we realize that it's probably a process failure somewhere, and we will work to improve on that process, and the community should provide feedback on the process as well. Okay, so I don't see questions around that, just memes. So I think we can skip to the next Uniswap migration proposal. Okay, so this one is pretty interesting, because I don't know whether people are aware, but for starters, we will be migrating to Uniswap v2, just because we have something else. So the reason for migrating from Sushi is because we are losing money on fees. Sushi's price dumped. I said this in a previous community call as well, I believe. Uh, Also, we don't have any you know big partnership with Sushi at the moment, so it's not really adding value from that side as well. It's much easier to just go to Uniswap and cash on the fees and leave it at that. so doing that, and Uni is also bigger, obviously. And so we will just migrate to Uni v2, and that will probably happen up. We will do a test migration this week, and then next week we would maybe migrate the whole liquidity, and maybe leave something small on Sushi. But that is all dependent on how we work with Chainlink as well, so that our feeds don't get messed up. So it's just a smooth migration process. On your side, obviously, you don't need to do anything, but I just wanted to make it clear that we won't be migrating to V3 Uniswap right now, because we have some other product within the DAO that we're working on that might not be compatible with V3. Wait, Karu, what did you ask? I feel like there was a question there, but I didn't understand it. Are we saying that the outcomes don't align with the opinions of those in the DAO, and therefore we should change the game? No, we should change the governance process, because I don't think people are able to make an informed decision there. Because like there was no due diligence process behind it. It was just one original post and nothing else besides that. I don't think anybody can invest based on that. So yeah, like it's not whether or not individuals within the DAO like it or not like it. It's just that I think the governance process is flawed in that regard. So yeah, for Uni, you can expect it to be on V2, and we'll see from there. So on the announcements, I don't actually see other proposals. Like talking about governance apathy, like what about community call apathy? Where are the questions? Where are the raised hands, like to come on stage? Like we turn 1 year old and this is the response? Oh, sorry.
Hey guys, sorry, hopping in
Hello.
here a little late.
Hello.
Yeah, Shadow, heard the last bit of what you're going over, but would anyone mind, just quickly catching me up a little bit? I see bits and pieces in the chat, but would love to get a TLDR, I suppose.
On Bearchain?
Yeah, it sounds like there's some opposition that I guess, or some concerns that we hadn't really heard as much about before. So we'd just love to figure out where people's heads are at and how we can work together to either get past it or see what makes sense, right?
So I speak for myself here. I do not speak for for Jalo. Do you want to go?
No, I was going to give the overview of what, but go ahead first, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, so like I'm literally speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for any department or whatever. It's my personal opinion. So I don't think like the governance process there is sound. Somebody makes a post, whether it's popular or not, is people just vote yes or no on it. It gets maybe promoted on Twitter, people vote on it, and that's like how a big allocation goes. We have departments or working groups, they're in place, incubator grants and whatever, that these sort of investments should go through, right? And they're supposed to do the due diligence process. And going forward, I think they should be the ones posting their opinion, whatever it may be, right? It should not be like that. For example, incubator rejects you, and then you go to the community, and then like the community just doesn't know about it, right?
Yeah, but it's exactly the opposite, right, Shadow? And I mean this in the sort of in the most respectful way possible. But we spent 3 weeks or more going back and forth with the folks from the incubator and policy teams about that. And Jala, I believe you were involved in that process, right? Like we chatted with folks at length. We, I think, tried to talk about how Ohm could be integrated into Berachain in terms of, use as collateral, in terms of as a default liquidity pool, etc. And like what I'm saying is we very much went through the incubator process, but also went beyond, I believe, the regular bounds of it by also posting the OIP. So if I'm missing something there, would love to be corrected, but this wasn't like, hey, let's pop it on the community and try to take 500 from Ohm. This was, we were born out of this ecosystem. We'd love to be aligned with it long term. We've worked extensively to be sort of as accommodating or as friendly as possible as well, even compared to everyone else we're working with. So you got to understand why when I get a bunch of messages and then hear about this in the chat, and it's just a little bit concerning and kind of comes off weird, right? When the process is sort of the opposite of what you just suggested.
Yeah, I'll just
No,
try
but
to-
I'm saying, like, who is accountable if that doesn't go as planned, right? Like, I understand you went and talked to incubator, but why didn't incubator take you on as an incubatee? Who is responsible if the project doesn't go well? Is it the community? Is it like 100K holders that share the responsibility? That's my issue. Like, nobody there is accountable. It should be somebody putting their name, or in this case, a working group name, on it and saying, yes, we did a due diligence and we think this is a good idea, right? Or no, we don't think it's a good idea, but the community can vote on it still.
Yeah, Smoke. I'll just chime in. I think the issue is not with. I mean, from my perspective, is not with Berachain. It's the going forward, right? If we have a process, and I think the reason why this wasn't included in incubator is because it didn't fall under the incubator mandate, right? And so it's kind of this in between. So there was a question we were discussing about for these things that don't fit into partnerships or incubator, right? What is the best path, right? Like, do we go direct to the community? Should there be a team that takes on like the diligence, right? I think that is like the larger concern, and not necessarily from my perspective, Berachain. Yeah, we had a diligence call with a bunch of members of the DAO, probably like 6 weeks ago, is my guess, right, Smokey? Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds in the
Yeah.
right range, Joe. And then sort of like async back and forth after that, one or two follow-up calls / questions, right? But I
Yeah.
want to say that it was a involved process.
Yeah, I mean, so I said before I didn't want to give my opinion. I'll give, like Shadow gave his opinion, I'll give my opinion. Like I was very impressed throughout the process. Like I have my reservations, as people brought up before, about like it's a massive undertaking to start an L1, right? I don't think that's a controversial opinion. But like throughout the process, like I was very impressed with you guys. And from my perspective, right, like the valuation I think was attractive, but that's just me, right? But I also like we did go through that, but I think there was an element of like this is kind of in between, and what's the best path forward, and well then like let's put it to the community. Come to the community with an OIP, and in many ways, right, that's great, right, because the community does own this project. I think just going forward for these kind of things, right? We were just talking about like for the next Berachain, right? Like, what is this the best process, or is there a better process for the next time for these things that are in between? I think that was, from my perspective, that's the discussion.
Yeah, can I throw in a question for Smokey? I was in one of the many calls with Berachain, and something that I was never able to answer myself, and maybe you can help me answer in this call, is Olympus has the Olympus 12, where with specific goals and strategies lined up for the year. Where do you see the best fit where Berachain brings value to any of those goals? What is your thoughts where you add value, one, and two, where do you map Berachain with respect to other chains there? Why the need for a chain?
Can I just jump in before you answer, Smokey? Just to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, certainly.
So we discussed a couple of those things on the community call with you guys, and that actually was very encouraging to me. That we like had identified. I think you mentioned them already. Like 2 specific like integrations, like beyond the financial investment. I think like we talked about on the call, right? Like the community should evaluate this as both like a partnership and a financial investment. on its merits, right? And so I was encouraged by like the integrations. But I'll let you get into the detail. But I think at least we covered that on the broader community call before this went to vote.
Yeah, most certainly. And I kind of would echo those same points, right, Jala? And even on the RFC and further, discussions on the OIP itself, I think my attitude and that of the team has always been, if there was a suggestion of a feasible way to embed Ohm deeper into the Berachain ecosystem, we are all ears for it. I won't entertain more conversations around the fee token side because I think we made it sort of clear enough that, with all due respect, this isn't meant to be Omi chain. This isn't meant to be something where there's already, you can't really set up an L1 very effectively where there's already a distributed supply that is not even by any means, and one where the chain itself does not have any control over inflation, monetary policy, etc., from a safety and network security point of view. However, when you look at the 2022 objectives and Olympus 12 action plan, I think driving utilization of Ohm as a collateral asset, 110%. In terms of increasing and facilitating the creation of Ohm X pairs, I think that both Ohm Bera and Ohm Honey would be, I would say highly incentivized and focused pairs in that ecosystem, which is why we wanted Olympus as a partner from day one, because as we mentioned in the AMA and previous conversations, there's a lot of folks I think who do have their eye on the project. And beyond that, I do think that early protocols in the chain will attract a bunch of attention. And it would be great for Ohm to be one of those that people are coming and learning about, especially if there's entrants from the Cosmos ecosystem as well, who don't really have an Ohm or Ohm equivalent for the most part beyond, a couple ideas back in the fork storm back in October. So my thought is that there's a lot of folks who would stand to benefit there, and I think that it, sort of addresses two of the key objectives as I understand them, if not more, along with just sort of similar ethos around the importance of free and well-flowing liquidity that accrues value to its users, which is sort of, a lot of what the philosophy behind Berachain is as we see it. So I hope that helps a little bit in terms of context there.
Thank you.
And how do you see, since we're having the discussion already, like how do you see the budget, like right there? Like obviously you know that the DAO treasury has shrunk, right, because of the price, and Incubator has a certain mandate. Is it 250 per protocol, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And how do you see like asking for twice that budget versus asking for 250K in terms of the price? And how would we, for example, make you, like obviously it's too late now since it's on Snapshot, but how could we make somebody who posts something like that reduce the ask?
If you guys want us to reduce the ask, we can certainly have that discussion and or do that. Like, I don't know how to frame this apart from the fact that we wanted Ohm to be part of our seed round, not because there isn't another option or there's there's no capital available. Rather, there's quite of there's people fighting for space in this round. I say that in the bluntest and also most well-meaning way possible. We wanted Ohm to be part of it because we think it's an opportunity to win together and to help the community. And ideally, have more people thinking about Ohm as well as part of the key story behind Berachain and the Bong Bears. And we're even...
So I'm not just talking about Berachain, to be clear. I'm talking
Yeah.
about like the whole process, Should we impose like a limit that we vote on, right? There should be like a limit for how much protocols can ask from Olympus or whatever.
Well, I would see that being the whole, point of the policy and or earlier conversations that we have, right? So, if two people come at you who are like, hey, we're going to build this fork that is the exact same as Olympus, but maybe, we'll throw in a little bit of locking, then I think that has to be evaluated in terms of a larger or weirder ask a lot differently from a thorough proposal. So, my take there really is that that's really, in my mind, where the policy and incubator teams would serve as a screening mechanism. And that is why this was put to an OIP as opposed to just an internal checkmark, right? So, I don't know if it's my place to comment on how the DAO should operate around there, but...
Why not?
I'm just one guy, right? My opinions are mine alone, and I don't think they're...
So am I, man.
Yeah, that's true, but you're one guy who's been here since the beginning and who has a fair bit of influence in the community, right? And I want to
And
be
just to be clear, it's not policy, but I think partnerships team. Policy is not involved with.
my apologies.
Yeah.
Be more clear. Partnerships in that case. I think that is where they could serve a role in effectively sanity checking or validating whether something is worth spending time looking at or not, right? So I don't think it's crazy for projects to ask for more if they want Olympus to be engaged beyond, the average scope, if you will. And that is, for speaking from my perspective, very much where we came at it with. But broadly, I don't think that's a crazy ask. I do understand that the DAO treasury has drawn down over time, and it's been a rough couple of months price action wise, and we're cognizant of that as well. But that was also factored into the conversations, and why that amount ended up where it is. So simply my take is it should be evaluated on a case by case basis, right? I don't think that there's a much clearer answer than that.
Well, my issue comes from sort of an accounting and risk management perspective, where you approve incubator to have, I don't know, like 3 million for a quarter, but then you also have incubator like projects, right? Asking for a separate, and then you can't really plan budget that way, because you gave 3 million to incubator and you said, okay, this is the amount the DAO is willing to invest in early stage projects, right? But then you have another project that is asking for a budget outside of incubator's budget for the same exact purpose. And so I think if stuff like that, right, goes out from incubator and requires a incubator stamp, whether it's approval or denial, that would make it much easier and streamlined for everybody, both to plan budget and to know like what's the opinion of the DAO on projects such as that. And obviously, this is not like, I want to make it clear, this is not like just pointing a finger at Bearchain. It is just that like Bearchain revealed that there are some issues with our process that need to be addressed. I honestly didn't do enough due diligence into Bearchain to be able to give an informed opinion whether or not it is a good or bad investment. I can say that the absolute amount, in my opinion, is large, given the DAO treasury, but in terms of whether it's a good or bad investment, I really can't say right now.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. And look, I would broadly agree with you. I think it's actually a very reasonable thing to say, hey, this is the maximum amount, or these are the bounds in which we are comfortable with the treasury deploying over this quarter or this time period, right? Or maybe it's even some range of the liquid treasury as a percent, right? Or perhaps there's some market cap bounds that this is related to. I don't know what the most effective measure is. My instinct would be a percent of what the DAO treasury is sitting on. And I think that that's very reasonable to implement. I just think that that's probably also its own separate conversation, but one that this could happily spur, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
Hey,
glad we have this discussion. Go ahead.
hey, Smokey, how are you, man?
I am good, sir. Sorry, I was just trying to grab the mute button.
No worries. So, for someone that doesn't know anything technical about blockchains, why should we trust Berachain? Why should we completely trust in a new consensus protocol in this space? And I mean this in like the most non-aggressive way as possible. I feel like we should have these questions answered if we're gonna be investing in X amount of dollars into Berachain.
Yeah, sure thing. If you want to talk about the tech side, I'll be more than happy to have DevBear do it and sort of run down what we think is interesting there, because he's been in the trenches on that for quite a while, and he's spent half a decade at top companies and Fangs, and is pretty capable when it comes to leading the technical development along with the other folks on the team. But sorry, what I'll say beyond that is that I don't think Olympus is alone in taking this bet, and that's also sort of the nature of the venture and or incubation adjacent landscape, right? You can have as assured odds as possible, and in the AMA, in the discussion posts, etc., Papa and I talked about our backgrounds, both in terms of building companies, selling companies on the VC side, managing teams of engineers, etc. So what I mean is, this isn't our first rodeo, and I know that sounds kind of like a dickish thing to say, so I'm sorry.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a dickish thing to say, but it just, there's a lot of people that come from the like a AAA gaming space, for example, producers that fall flat on their face. So I mean this in like the most non-aggressive way possible.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see some. I think the community should see some technicals, or if you guys could just maybe sum it up for us, and a few minute like AMA like right now or something. That I think that would be beneficial to everybody here.
Sure. DevBear, do you want to give them a little bit of the rundown on the technicals behind Berachain? I'm happy to speak towards, the philosophy slash motivation slash background. I broadly think that, and again, I say this respectfully, like this is something that should have come up like 3 weeks ago, right, or 2 weeks ago, not as we're in the like last couple days of closing out our round slash process. And it's obviously, this is a many headed, organism slash octopus, so I understand that it's internal comms can always be a little bit crazy, but as speaking from someone in the seat that I am, where we have another call scheduled in like 15 minutes or whatever, it's a weird situation to be put in compared to the normal. But I'm happy to roll with it. So DevBear, why don't do you want to give them a bit of a rundown?
Yeah, for sure. I apologize if my audio is really bad. I'm actually out walking my dog right now. But yeah, in terms of the technicals, you're completely right. It is a brand new consensus engine. We're writing big chunks of it from scratch. That's obviously a risk. But as Smokey mentioned, that's definitely part of early stage venture. In terms of how it functions, it's effectively a fork of Tendermint, replacing proof of stake model with the proof of liquidity model that we talked about. So in a nutshell, how proof of stake works is the actual staking the token isn't what gives the validator power. It's taking those stake tokens and mapping it to effectively an integer. And that integer is just compared among all of the other validators in the network. And that determines effectively how many of the blocks, like over, some length of time, that validator's staked percentage will basically be, this is how many blocks are proposed by said validator. And then what happens from there is then all of the other validators vote on the result of the block that was proposed. And if, in the case of Tendermint, 67% of the validators come to consensus, then they move on to the next. That block is committed to basically the database and all of the validators, and then So effectively, what proof of liquidity consensus is, you're taking that integer value, all that matters, calculating it in a different way. And the way that we're calculating it is based on liquidity metrics. So in the case of, at the start, it'll be effectively how much value, or TDL, is in a particular liquidity pool. And that is essentially delegated between all the validators at certain rates, depending on what users specify. And that is the validator weights.
So from what I heard of that, it's a little bit hard to hear you. I'm not gonna lie. You it sounds like pretty compelling. What security? What types of security protocols, or what audits have you guys done to ensure that this consensus protocol is going to be legit for everybody? I think I read somewhere about being audited through CrocSwap. I don't know much about that, but it was just a quick read that I had gone through earlier yesterday. So care to think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as it stands now, Tendermint is in production, been used on, I would say probably close to 50 or 60 production blockchains at this point. And a large amount of our code is, basically boilerplate Tendermint. In terms of how these weights are calculated, that code's still being written right now. It will be fully audited before we launch. And then the DEX that we're using, as mentioned in the AMA before, will be Swap, which is going through a full set of audits as well on their own. And then just from a software architecture perspective, everything, the DEX and the consensus engine, as much as they are coupled, we're doing it in a way that's almost like microservices. So if there is an issue with one component, they can be quarantined off to make sure that blocks are still produced, people don't lose funds, et cetera, et cetera. And going with CrocSwap was just, those guys are gigabrains. It made a lot of sense. And the way that they structure the liquidity, both ambiently as well as concentrated, gave us a really great platform to build proof of liquidity consensus off of.
All right, thank you very much. Those are some good answers. really appreciate your time. I'm going to get off the stage now because I'm hearing some feedback that you had already answered some of these questions. I had not seen this in the previous AMAs, but thank you for coming up here and giving us your time.
Cheers, man. And just to clarify quickly, right? The Croc Swap guys are great, and we're looking forward to working with them. They aren't going to be the ones, doing the same auditing. We might work with, the team from Nethermint, et cetera, who are already chatting with, on the audit side. That will happen, as we get closer to fully launching the testnet and, the actual full chain launch, right? So right now, I'd say we're 75% towards where we want to be in terms of testnet build out, and should have that going in the next few weeks. And at that point, there'll be a lot more focus on auditing and, of course, trying to break as much of it as possible before main launch.
I have a question slash comment. Most new L1s that are being created are ghost chains. The movement right now are L2s. So why not be a L2 when you have the entire Ethereum ecosystem waiting to support you than to be a L1 and fighting for people to even show up and use your blockchain?
Yeah, I think there's a few different schools of thoughts on this, and we do agree that there's a lot of traction towards the world of L2s. And I think we expect to see some interesting stuff from ZK Sync and some of the roll-ups over the next little while. However, we're viewing this from, I'd say, a fundamentally different perspective, which is not here's where the hype is going and here's where the next rotation is. Let's run to it in the hopes of pumping our bags as quickly as possible. We're thinking, what is the best way to drive value accrual and the best platform for people to build on in an ecosystem, which is ultimately what I think the team believes the point of a blockchain is. It's not what is the market going to try to buy right away. Or what is a popular narrative. It's what is it that enables builders to, push the boundaries of what we can do in this sort of weird decentralized supercomputing Wild West, right? The way that we saw it, proof of liquidity consensus provides a really interesting means of actually avoiding the ghost chain thesis, or that that situation that you guys tend to see when people go from boba to near to metis to fuse or whatever over the span of a couple of weeks, where a bunch of mercenary capital rotates in, rotates out, and the chain deflates from 700 million to 20 million in TVL or something, with nothing but a swap and maybe a lending protocol. What we're looking to do is actually provide the tools that allow an ecosystem to grow and accumulate sticky capital, and beyond that, what I would consider sort of landmark attraction dApps, so stuff like DeFi Kingdoms for Harmony, from day one. And that's why what proof of liquidity consensus does more than anything else is it actually ensures that permanent liquidity is getting accrued towards the chain, and protocols, or more importantly, really, the chain is directing that liquidity towards protocols that are engaging in governance and that are presently building on the chain. So the other part of this that's quite important is you might have seen that Berachain is an EVM compatible L1 built on Cosmos. So that also means that there's a number of folks from the Cosmos ecosystem who are currently without a lot of interesting applications or things to play with, that we expect to entertain in this world as well, right? And combined with a really strong dev ecosystem and strong documentation and I'd say baselines to build off of that allows for really strong internal tooling, we think that that's a more compelling narrative than L2s. And that's just more of, I think, a philosophical approach than one of L1 versus L2, for the sake of where people are looking right now, right? So I think I'd add beyond that we're one of our investors is actually Mustafa, one of the founders of Celestia, which you guys might have heard of, and is expected to play a really integral role in L2 infrastructure down the road. And we're actually able to work with folks like that or other internal stuff to basically have templates for rollups that would actually roll up back to Berachain if we find ourselves in a situation down the road where network congestion is a problem, as we've seen with some of the L1s like Phantom and AVAX and Harmony more recently, right? The way I think of that is it's a champagne problem that we can get ahead of and front run if we see lots of good activity on the network, and actually set up templates that allow people to effectively have a roll up in a box. But that's really our thoughts on the subject. So hope that helps answer the question a bit, Blockchain.
Yeah, thanks very much. I know you guys got to run to another call, but I know this was unconventional, and I appreciate you guys jumping on stage and answering these questions. Yeah, really clarifying some of the points. And just, again, like this was more about a broader discussion of process in the DAO. Not meant to be targeted at Barachain, but I really appreciate you guys coming up here.
Yeah, cheers. Appreciate the questions, guys, and as mentioned, we try to be as responsive as possible, both in our own servers and here. I pop into OT, probably OT more than any other channel. So if you guys want to ask me stuff, I'll be around there in general, and of course on the proposals.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks again. Yeah, we're coming right up on the hour.
Thanks, guys.
If others
Cheers, guys.
have questions.
Yeah, I wanted to open it up like to some last questions because we spent a good chunk of the bit of the community call on Beartrain. So I just wanted to open it up like maybe for another 5 to 10 minutes on Olympus questions if people have. I saw something about, I forgot now. Sorry. Reporting on like, are you guys preparing quarterly utility report? So I'm not sure what quarterly utility report means here. We have the treasury dashboard that shows the treasury progress. We have policy reports. We have monthly. We have treasury reports monthly. But yeah, we're preparing the quarterly reports that are supposed to cover everything and be like a bit longer. So yeah, if there are no more questions, I want to thank everybody for joining. Wait, somebody raised their hand. Go ahead. Blockchain T.
I have a question about the proposal that passed earlier in the week about the rate reduction. When would I oppose it? But when would that actually start to take place? Or if we get a nice price move up, will we not go into the reduction? I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
No, we would still go with it. In terms of like when it would be done, I will have to check. There's also a proposal or request for comment. I'm not sure in which state is it at the moment about changing the rebasing, about changing the like calculation for the reward rate from total supply to staked supply. So let me just check with the policy team whether we want to maybe amend that emission reduction proposal, because it would achieve the same thing just with a different way. Like the emission reduction would do it by reducing the reward rate from the total supply, but we can reduce it also by considering just staked supply instead of total supply. We have other reasons for using the staked supply instead. So we will communicate this like soon. Okay. Any more questions? Key objectives. What we did in first quarter for those key objectives, and what will DAO make in Q2. Yeah. So we'll have a quarterly report that will go over that. Yeah. I was thinking something else. Yeah. We will publish that. Okay. Second. Okay, yeah. Okay, so thanks everybody for attending and talk to you next week. Bye.